Garland in the corner. He's got it. Feed stamps. Pow with the running in. Mitchell shakes. Up to the basket. And thunders it home. Oh! Mobley throws it down. And Allen blocked the shot at the rim.
The Chase Down podcast is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost. There's no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, we have had a trade, gang. Justin is going to be podcasting as scheduled on Monday after tonight's game against the Blazers, while I gallivant off to San Francisco for work. But we didn't want to go without any content on the day, as the Cavs have announced their acquisition of Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, for DeAndre Hunter as the principals. Let's go through the trade details first. This is going to be a solo pod, by the way, so saddle up. We'll go probably 15, 20 minutes, and we'll let Justin go much longer and much smarter about this thing, but we just wanted to get a quick reaction on the books. Let's talk trade details. Cavs sent out DeAndre Hunter, a second-round pick that's going to Chicago, and also have waived Luke Travers, their two-way, in order to receive Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, and Emmanuel Miller, who is on a two-way from the Bulls. You have to get a player. The Bulls have to send something to be a part of this three-way deal, and that is what the Cavs are receiving from the Bulls in that. So that's why the Cavs were kind of forced to make that move to waive Luke Travers. And the Bulls do a little good bit of business, taking on Dario Saric for 2 seconds, one from the Kings, one from the Cavs. And the Kings take a big swing on DeAndre Hunter. So it's the end of the DeAndre Hunter era in Cleveland. Not a very long one, as he was their deadline prize last year, and it just wasn't working very well. And they cut bait, they cut salary, and pick up Keon Ellis, who is a very prized prospect. You've probably heard every other Cavs pod mention this, but a lot of reports that like at least 10 teams had hit up the Kings about Ellis, who is a really exciting 3-and-D wing. Dennis Schroeder comes in as well, and Cavs only have to give up a second and DeAndre Hunter. So general reaction before I start talking about the individual pieces. Like, am I happy? Am I excited about this trade? And I think the answer is yes. Just on its own basketball merits, I think the Cavs are better than they were 2 days ago. It's a team that has really, really missed having a wing stopper. And it's a team that's missed having a backup guard that gets downhill, gets 2 feet in the paint, and keeps their offense organized, especially given their injuries. So, is it like do I think this is a home run, no doubt deal that couldn't possibly bite them? No, I don't. I think that this is a single or a double, with the capacity to kind of turn into a triple or a homer, depending on how the Keon Ellis era and the Dennis Schroeder era, play out. But I think right now this is just a solid move that addresses what the team needs. Gives them some salary flexibility. We'll talk about that a little bit and what that means in practice. But ultimately, I think what I wanted from this trade deadline, if the Cavs were going to make moves, was that I wanted them to, even if they were making moves that had financial considerations, I wanted them to make moves that I thought made the team better. And I think that this move made the team better. So let's jump in and start talking about exactly why, each piece of the deal. And I do want to start off by talking about DeAndre Hunter, because this is a player that the Cavs gave up a couple pick swaps and Karis LeVert and George Niang to pick up, and he comes to the Cavs in the middle of a career year and was great. He was awesome all through the rest of the regular season, through the first round against Miami, and was really pretty solid in that game 1 against Indy before Ben Mathurin hurt him, hurt his thumb. I want to say it was on his shooting hand, and then he wasn't quite right the rest of that series. But then you go into this offseason and he's getting a lot of credit, a lot of pub. Like, gets kind of called like the MVP of the offseason workouts and the training camp, and like as a fan, you go, oh, I've heard this before. I remember when they were saying that about Tyre Jerome, who put up a 6 Man of the Year level campaign for the Cavs that was like out of nowhere. And then further, Hunter's importance took on another level in the wake of losing Ty Jerome and adding Lonzo Ball to replace Ty's kind of minutes at the backup point guard. And even though and I'm sure there will be plenty to talk about with Lonzo, for the foreseeable future. But like even going in, it was kind of understood. Even the best version of Lonzo Ball is not going to play like Ty Jerome played. He's not going to be a guy that gets 2 feet in the paint and is killing teams with floaters and pull up threes and being a 20 points per 36 guy. So it was like, all right, DeAndre, we're going to need you to pick up your scoring. We're going to need to pick up your volume. I think I remember saying in the offseason, even if the efficiency goes down a little bit, if the volume goes up, I'm probably happy with that trade. And at the end of the day, it just was kind of a nightmare year so far for DeAndre, where the three-pointer just completely abandoned him. And he's been around 30% on the season from three. The turnovers have been really rough. The playmaking hasn't really risen commensurate when the team kind of needed a little more from him there. And that's not fair to him. That's never really been his game. He's been a play finisher, not a play starter. But he's not finishing plays at a very high level. And then on the defensive end, while his perimeter isolation defense has always graded out well, a lot of the off-ball stuff just kind of tanked. And that was never his strength, but it really, really fell off. And, you saw the lapses in transition. You saw the lapses off ball, navigating screens, things like that. And, all that to say, like, none of those things, like DeAndre has never been like a crazy great playmaker or a crazy great off ball defender and intangibles guy. But over the course of his career, you've always been able to count on is the shot making and kind of the supplemental things you get just by employing a very tall man who shoots the ball at a high level and also can guard on ball at a high level. And I just think without the shooting, all the other limitations just really were kind of glaring. And, I really am rooting for the guy to find his footing in Sacramento. Cause like even DeAndre Hunter skeptics, like he's never been a 30% 3-point shooter. That's not who he is. So do I expect a bounce back from DeAndre? And like, I was even thinking to myself, is the best version of DeAndre better than the best version of what Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder can provide? I would say generally yes. And I think that's representative of like what it cost to acquire Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis and what it cost to acquire DeAndre last year. But for what this Cavs team needs, I'm just not sure that DeAndre was a perfect fit anymore. And a big part of that is just that Jalen Tyson is a star a star within his role for this team and has really become the skeleton key at the small forward position that this team has been looking for years. And, suddenly he became so much better than I think anyone, including the Cavs, expected this year. And then, you look at this team last year and you look at the small forward room and you go, man, it's just kind of Max and then, Okoro, whose 3-point shooting we don't really trust. Or we have to play small and play Karras there, and Karras isn't really a small forward at his best. And you kind of were like, well, they need to make a swing at the small forward position. And also, Hunter playing small forward helps hide some of those weaknesses. He doesn't have to be a play initiator playing next to Darius or Donovan. He doesn't have to guard up and have some of his physical limitations tested at the power forward position. So, like, what a picture perfect fit it would be. But then you look at this year, and I look, assuming that Max Strus comes back and is pretty close to the Max Strus we know and love, a small forward room of Jalen Tyson and Max Strus is enough to make me feel comfortable. So, and then you look at the big positions, and like I just don't think you're getting the best version of DeAndre Hunter at the 4 anyway. Plus, you've had a guy like Naquan Tomlin burst onto the scene. Dean is playing well. You've got a little bit more backup 5 depth than Thomas Bryant, who's been playing well, and some deeper depth than Larry Nance. So I get the idea that if you were like, man, we gave up a lot to get this guy, and now we're getting off of him and having to give extra assets to get off of him. Sure, I get that. But like, I think this league moves fast, and what Hunter did for this team just got a little less important. But more than that, and I've listened to other podcasts say as much. Like, I just don't think he was playing very well, and the Cavs are a title contender that can't really afford to have their third or fourth highest paid player not play well for the duration of the season and pretty much context independent. So I understand if there's some anxiety about moving on, but like at the end of the day, it just kind of didn't feel like it was turning the right direction. And with where the Cavs are in the second apron and where they've been from a health perspective, like getting a couple more than warm bodies but really helpful rotation players in a trade for the cost of Hunter in a second, like it just kind of makes sense to me. You know what else makes sense is Zoom Workplace. Teams move fastest when everyone's in sync. Zoom Workplace keeps meetings, chats, docs, and more together so your work flows like a perfect play. Keep work moving and zoom ahead with Zoom Workplace. Let's talk about the new guys. That's probably what you're here for. While Dennis Schroeder is probably the more famous of the two additions, I wouldn't say that he is the prize. Keon Ellis is definitely the prize. He's 26. He measured at 6'4.75 inches at the combine just about 4 years ago. So he's about 6'6" in shoes. He's definitely not. You're taking a little bit of a size hit on the wing with him. He's definitely, and he's a skinnier guy. I would definitely say you're probably in what I've seen so far, and like I'm catching up as with the rest of you, so please assign some grains of salt to some of this analysis. But from what I've seen, he's really great guards. Kind of like we've always felt Isaac Okoro was. He's got a 6'9" wingspan, so he's got long arms. He's got quick feet, but he does have a slight frame. Like, he's not someone you really can like opt up into the power forward position pretty much ever. Like, that's just not really what his frame tells you he should be doing. The defensive metrics are very, very good. Justin, my dear esteemed co-host, pulled some basketball index metrics. 78th percentile perimeter ISO defender. That's a B+. A B on ball screen navigation at 71st percentile. But this man is a chaos agent. And like, if you were like, I kind of feel like he guards the way we thought maybe Lonzo would guard, in the sense that he is just a demon off the ball. His off-ball chaser defense is a 95th percentile. That's an A+ grade on Basketball Index. Pickpocket rating 93. He averages 2 steals and a block per 36 over the last 3 seasons, which are the 3 seasons he's played material minutes. I kind of threw out his rookie year because he only played 70 minutes or something like that. And his passing lane defense, also a 93rd percentile and a grade A passing lane defender. So is he a lockdown perimeter ISO defender? Not right now on this Kings team. One thing I will say, though, and we see this a lot with a team like the San Antonio Spurs, when you have rim protection and size on the back line that makes you feel safe as a defender, you can play a little bit more aggressively. You can get in guys' shirts a little bit more, knowing that if you do get blown by, you've got some protection. And Keon Ellis really hasn't had that a lot this year on this Kings team. Domantas Sabonis is really, really strong player, but he's not a rim protector by any means. So I do wonder if there's like, if he's a 78th percentile this season on the perimeter with this Kings team, maybe you can bump him up 5-6 percentage points and have him join the truly elites if you've got Evan and Jared on the floor with him. I don't know if that's true or not. Again, I'm still learning the player, but I do think that kind of context really matters. Like when you feel safe to be an aggressive defender, how does that change the way you guard? So and then the off ball and the chaos stuff, I think is really, really great. And really, really exciting. He's got really quick hands. I think the wingspan really plays in his favor there in getting those poke outs because, you look at a 6'4", 6'5" frame and you think, okay, I can kind of put the ball out here. And it's like, the go-go gadget arms kind of just poke out and poke the ball out. So that's really, really exciting that he's able to be kind of that event defender. Again, 2 steals, 1 block per 36. He's not going to be a 36-minute player for us, but the fact that you're kind of seeing that chaos there, really, really valuable. Not much of a rebounder, 4 rebounds per 36, 1 offensive board. So he'll get in there a little bit. Nothing too crazy. And not much playmaking, a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, but he only averages 2.3 assists per 36. So really just not a guy that you're going to throw the ball to and say, run a secondary pick and roll or like make a really sharp pass off a cut. Like he's going to be more of a play finisher than a play than a guy who is like this crazy connective piece, but he's not complete chopped liver in terms of just moving the ball. But again, it's worth noting that this Kings context the last couple of years just hasn't been great. So I think, but I just for what I've watched, it really hasn't been what you'll expect from the guy. What you do get is really good 3-point shooting. On 6 attempts per 36 over the last 3 seasons, he's been shooting around 41% from 3. He's not a movement shooter. He's more of a catch and shoot guy, but like that's fine. This Cavs team should be able to get defenses destabilized enough to give him the looks that he needs. And then from 2, he's a 57% shooter. I mean, but like he is a 3-point guy. Like of his 8.8 attempts per 36 over the last 3 years, 6.2 of those are 3s, 2.7 of them are 2s. So just kind of expect him to be a guy who either shoots or gets off the ball. Unless it's like a pick 6 and off a steal and transition. Like just that's really who he is. There are questions with Ellis of like, hey, like why wasn't he getting a lot of minutes in Sacramento this year and really even last year? And it's hard to know. He averaged 24 minutes per game last year, and the 80 games he played was very durable last year, so that's a great shout. And in the 43 games he's appeared in this year, though, only 17.6. And you don't know if that's a glut because like they signed Russ and Schroeder and they have Levine and DeRozan, so it's just like a lot of guys on the perimeter that eat up those minutes. Or was that coaching staff seeing something that maybe we didn't? What I find encouraging is how many teams were like, hey, we're pretty sure there's some meat on the bone with how this guy's getting used. The fact that teams like the Celtics and Spurs, I believe, were reported to also be interested in Ellis tells me, hey, this is a guy that other smart teams are interested in, and they think that there's some value there. Further with Ellis, he isn't on an expiring contract and is about to go into restricted free agency. What does this do for the Cavs? They do get his bird rights, so they can go over the cap to re-sign him. I do think a little sneaky thing with him that's interesting is because he was on a very, very cheap deal, his cap hold will not be very high. So as the Cavs are doing, machinations with their roster in the offseason, assuming they do, you're not going to be sitting with like we have to address Keon Ellis right this second because he's got a $30 million cap hold or something like that. Like the cap hold is representative of like an X percent of your or X amount of times your current or your last year's salary. So it's not like it's going to be like a $20 million cap hold or a $30 million cap hold. So gives them just a little bit more flexibility there. I do, and this is not reported or sourced, I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. I don't think that you make Keon Ellis the kind of the prize of the trade for you if you don't think he's a guy you want in your system and on your roster for at least the next couple years. But I guess the season will tell. Let's move over to Dennis Schroeder, who is kind of a secondary piece to this, signed with the Kings in the offseason. We are his 10th team in his 10-11 year career. So this man has been bouncing around quite a bit, but has been pretty helpful just about everywhere he's went. And he's always been someone that teams want and have given minutes to. He is an interesting player for this team specifically, and I kind of feel like he will do a little bit of what Karis LeVert did for this team and a little bit of what Ty Jerome did for this team. In terms of like with Ty, I think Dennis has these kind of heat check stretches where he can kind of take over games by getting downhill, by using his finishing ability, by getting hot from three. He's not a 3-point shooter by any means. He's at 34% from three this season, 40% from the field, 17 and 7 per 36. But what he can do is get hot and kind of change the energy of games by being kind of an irritant, the way Ty could be, and by just kind of scoring in bunches. And then with Karis, although obviously Karis is a wing, he's 6'6", 6'7", and Schroeder is a 6'1" point guard. He is not a big guy. What Schroeder can do is get 2 feet in the paint and feed bigs and spray out to the corners. 7 assists per 36 is very, very strong for a backup point guard. And like the Cavs have really missed that this year with Lonzo struggling the way he has. He's really consistently able to get downhill. He's able to finish, and he's able to kind of just get things unstuck by being a really strong ball handler. And on the defensive end, while I don't think by the metrics he's great, the size is a limitation, much like it is for Craig Porter Jr. He does have a little bit of nastiness to his game, again, just that irritant quality where even if he doesn't have the best physical traits, he's got pretty long arms. I forget exactly what the wingspan is, so forgive me. Solo pods are hard. But he can kind of poke out for steals and things like that, and just kind of, again, be an irritant. And I think that will go a long way for this team. So while Ellis is definitely the prize, I really wouldn't look past what Schroeder as this team, even if you're not the biggest Dennis Schroeder fan, and like your mileage may vary. It kind of feels like he runs hot and cold. Like he went to Detroit last year and was awesome for them. Then he comes to Sacramento and they're like, let's get off this deal with him right after they signed him to a 3-year deal. The year before that, he was really great in Brooklyn, and the Warriors traded 5 second-rounders or something like that for him, and then he wasn't very impactful in Golden State. So he's a guy who can kind of run hot and cold depending on the context of the team he's in, depending on what minutes he's getting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I do think you can generally rely on him to be who he is. It's just a matter of whether who he is works for what you do. And I think the Cavs have room for a guy like this. Like, think about how valuable it's been when Craig Porter Jr. has a really nice game where he's able to get downhill a lot and challenge the defenses. And, I think about a guy like Jared Allen, even with a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who, Schroeder is no like savant. He's not like Darius Garland as a passer. But what he can do is get downhill and make the reads that are right there. And I think that this team's pivot away from drives, basically, and their pivot away from being a consistent downhill pressure team from the guards, in some cases due to Ty Jerome not being here anymore, and in some cases due to Lonzo being a different kind of player, DeAndre being a different kind of player for that matter. Is I think that's why we've seen so many games where it's like, hey, why does Jared only have 4 field goal attempts in the mid fourth quarter? And like, at the end of the day, Jared is a player who must be fed. He is not a guy who will just go get buckets on his own. So a guy that commands the attention of the defense, and Jared can just be the easy release valve for him to get easy buckets. I think like that'll really pay dividends, especially when Darius isn't around. So I think that the roster, again, is just like a little better suited. Like, they've missed having a perimeter stopper that is like truly a additive defensive player without really giving much back since Isaac Okoro was traded away this offseason. And I think to some extent, like, this trade is a bit of a recognition of, Hey, we missed what Ty Jerome gave us last year. We missed what Isaac Okoro gave us last year, and we're better equipped to handle the thing. One, we just like, I think Dennis Schroeder is going to be as good as Ty Jerome was last year? No, I don't. Do I think Keon Ellis could be better than what Isaac Okoro was last year? I think it's very possible. I think he's a better shooter than Isaac, a more willing shooter, maybe less dominant as an ISO defender, but maybe can bridge the gap a little bit to what we were hoping for, which was a little bit more event plays. Again, 3.2 stocks per 36 ain't nothing to sneeze at. So I think they did miss those things from those guys. And they've got these new pieces like Jalen Tyson that are adding a lot to the alchemy of the team that help with the things that maybe they wanted DeAndre for in the first place. They just don't need as much. Jalen Tyson has been able to be a secondary offensive weapon and a 3-point weapon. Sam Merrill has taken a huge leap in terms of his ability to fill up the box score. So I just think they're a little bit better shaped with this change. And obviously we've got still 4 days until the trade deadline on the 5th. And so we might see more moves. We might see more changes. Last thing I wanted to hit on before I say goodbye, because, shout out to Mac Perry and Danny Cunningham, who do this by themselves most of the time. It's so hard to solo pod. These guys are amazing. So shout out to those guys. Listen to their podcast. It's Cavaliers and Locked on Cavs. And my boy Bob Schmidt over on Fear the Fro. All three unbelievable solo podders covering this team. But I think that last thing I wanted to talk about was the question that, are the Cavs too small now? Like, okay, now your bench looks something like, in terms of the rotation bench players that you're expecting, it'll be Sam and Keon and Dennis and Max, and that's like 4-6-5 guys or shorter that all are guys that you would expect to play for you off the bench, and then you probably have Dean as your fifth bench player, assuming that Tyson holds on to the starting spot for the rest of the year. At least that's what I'm going to assume it, because that's what I want, and it's my podcast. And I get the concern, and I do think it's real. But at the end of the day, I just don't think you were getting that much from the size that DeAndre brought to the table. He wasn't rebounding at he's never been a great rebounder, to be honest. He's not one of those fours that you can just like in a pinch switch onto a 5 and trust that he's not going to get mashed. And then, so like I just don't know what we were getting other than like a high release point on the jumper from him at the 4. Like even before his nightmare season, Justin and I, but especially me, mostly me, was throwing a fit that like the value of DeAndre is that he can play small forward and be that big, not that he is really gives you that much as a small ball 4. So do I think that they are a smaller team than maybe I'd be comfortable with? Yeah, I do think that. It's a lot of reliance on Dean Wade as the backup 4. And it's a lot of reliance on, Naquan Tomlin to step up and be a productive player in high leverage moments as the team is currently constructed. But like, do I think the team is any less ability to, or do I think the team has any less of an ability to handle minutes with one of Jarrett or Evan on the floor, with Max Strus or Jalen Tyson at the 4, than I did with DeAndre Hunter at the 4, just because DeAndre Hunter happens to be a true 6'8", 6'9" player, and Max is 6'5", 6'6", and Jalen's 6'6", 6'7". I just don't. I just don't feel that way. I don't feel like, oh man, now they're in trouble. Like if you thought they were, my feeling is, if you think they're in trouble now, you already thought they were in trouble, and I don't think they're materially worse off in that capacity. Like, so would it be great to have a 6'8", 6'9", 3-4 hybrid join the roster and shore up that weakness? Sure, but again, I just don't think they're any worse off from that front, and I think that's why I'm generally supportive of the trade, because I just think they really missed having a backup point guard that could get downhill. I think they really missed having a true 3-and-D wing that can both guard his man and create chaos and hit threes at volume. And that should have been DeAndre, but like he just wasn't making shots. So at the end of the day, I think this is a strong move for the Cavs. I think the flexibility that they have going into the end of the offseason is a little bit stronger than it was before. Oh, last thing I want to say on Schroeder is if you are a little worried about Schroeder's term, because he was signed to a 3-year deal this year, like go to Spot Track. That last year is a partial guarantee, which helps. The Cavs can, if the Cavs do want flexibility a couple years down the line, it's a little bit easier than it initially looks like. So, which makes it confusing to me, by the way, that the Kings were like so motivated to get off of this deal. But that's neither here nor there, and I certainly don't cover the Kings closely enough to have strong opinions there. So, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope this was relatively informative. I hope you feel excited about this change for the Cavs. I think that they are going to be, we'll see how the rest of the deadline pans out. If this is it, or if they're going to make more moves. But as always, I'm very appreciative of this front office for leaving no stone unturned, having a point of view, knowing who they like, who they don't like, and being decisive. Like even when they've neglected to make a move, it's come with a degree of decisiveness that I really appreciate. Like this front office knows what they want, and you see a lot of these front offices that kind of seem directionless, and even if you don't like the moves the Cavs make, they like you could never accuse them of not knowing what they wanted in the first place. And I think that matters at the end of the day for like long-term stability for the team that we all love. So thank you so much for tuning in. Justin will be live Monday night with a guest of some sort. I don't know who's booked yet, but I will be away until the second part of the week since I'm going on a little business trip. Thank you so much for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and like this video, comment, and get the reach out. If you're listening on audio, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, go Cavs.